can't claim either to have any background in overseas aid work. I don't have. The kind of work I have done has been voluntary, and it's been almost 20 years in Dublin, in association with the hospital here, working with social workers on the ground, helping women and children who are in need. And they come from countries all over the world at this point. We have access to interpreters in over 30 languages at this stage. So I see the difficulties here. I understand and I know about the difficulties where you are, and in Europe, yes, we need to do an awful lot more. We know that we've agreed to give 0.7% of GNI, gross national income, to overseas aid, and I don't know that we're quite achieving that. Certainly many other countries aren't anywhere nearly on track to do that. And with the economic crisis, there are cutbacks everywhere. I've been in several meetings here during the week. We've heard about cutbacks in the Equality Authority, we've heard cutbacks in other semi-state organisations, and I'm sure countries will be trying to cut back here. And we do have a moral responsibility. How can countries in the South, provide for their own futures, make plans for their own futures and for development if they don't have any certainty in relation to the continuation of monies coming their way, or even know how much those monies are going to be? So at the very least, we have to make sure that the EU member states do stick to the agreements that they have made, do stick to the budget that they've made available for the South. And we know that trade is very important. Trade has helped this country. In the early part of the Celtic Tiger, we saw here how assistance from foreign assistance and access to markets, combined with the ingenuity of Irish people and their hard work, gave huge economic and social development here. It wasn't enjoyed by all, but we have to agree that certainly living standards in the last 20, 30 years are hugely different from the way they were, say, in the 1950s. I won't say that trade is a universal good, however. In the 1990s, we saw how market liberalisation, when it's enforced from the outside, can often lead to ruin. And we saw that particularly in South America, in Argentina, for example. So pacing and sequencing of reform is everything. It's very important. We have to be very careful to allow Africa to develop trade policies which are appropriate to their own stage in development and which are matched by a robustness in their own economic institutions. The EU has a role to play in overseeing private sector investment in developing countries. We have to be very careful that European companies don't engage in opaque or suspect activities in their dealings with the developing world. We don't want them to engage in exploitative practices by taking advantage of weak institutional and regulatory environments, which they're very likely to do if they can in the developing world. So the ECB funding to the private sector should be accompanied with monitoring to make sure that there will be fair conduct in developing nations. And the EU should encourage the companies operating in these countries observe human rights and sustainable development principles, and that they make an effort, a real effort, to consult with local people regarding the impacts of their industry. And I've spoken earlier this week in relation to climate change, and we have a role to play in relation to that too, including assisting countries to achieve targets that we are imposing because of what we have done in this part of the world to the climate, which is having such adverse impact in the South. We have a responsibility there too. One last point I'll make in the last few seconds. The Lisbon Treaty called for the establishment of a European Voluntary Humanitarian Aid Corps. Now, I know that many NGOs, probably some represented here, have campaigned against this for some time, according to Dóchas' own paper on the Reform Treaty. And the NGOs have argued that achieving quality and accountability is essential for effective humanitarian assistance, inconsistently opposing that idea. In the area of trade, the treaty did introduce a few new powers for the Commission, which could maybe strengthen the EU's role in pushing for trade liberalisation, but they didn't, while giving new powers to the European Commission in this area, there wasn't any corresponding increase in accountability either to the European Parliament or to the national parliaments. So as a result, EU trade policy will remain somewhat opaque and surreptitious, and that's not something I would support either. So is Cúis mór áthas dom bheith anseo you can talk to the Winter Dóchas. I'm very proud to be here. I'd be very proud if I am elected to be associated in any way with you, because from the bottom of my heart I do thank you for the work you're doing. I would support it, I would take your advice, and the world has changed. We all need to put hands out to each other, help each other now, and it's a moral responsibility, it's an imperative. Thank you very much, Sylvia.